square off, and welcome to Arizona's version of March Madness. College basketball's pay-to-play scandal blew up last week in Tucson. An ESPN report alleged that basketball coach Sean Miller discussed a $100,000 payment to a star recruit. Days later, Miller issued a sweeping denial of that story.
I cannot remain silent in light of media reports that have impugned the reputation of me, the university, and sullied the name of a tremendous young man.
But Miller did admit to rejecting a payment involving another potential recruit. After days of controversy, the Arizona Board of Regents voted unanimously to keep the well-paid and very successful Miller as basketball coach. After all that, ESPN still stood by its original story. Lost in all this, one of Miller's longtime assistants has already been charged with taking bribes from player agents. Joining us this morning, Paula Bovin, a professor at Arizona State University and a longtime sports columnist in Phoenix and Arizona, who's also enshrined in the Arizona Sports Hall of Fame.
That's
Welcome.
A big deal, Bram, yeah.
You really are. You're a great guest to have for this topic. Does anybody involved here, the university, the Regents, Sean Miller, ESPN, the NCAA, does anybody come off as looking good in any of this?
No, not really. I mean, it's kind of a mess, and you know, it's a challenge because we don't know the true facts but I would say sort of the biggest guilty kind of party in this right now is the media.
The
Just
media.
How they covered it.
Okay, so ESPN reports this $100,000 payment discussed to DeAndre Ayton. They seem to get the sequence of events, his when he was committed, out of order, and corrected that. Their sourcing seemed kind of thin. You know the stuff so well. As you read that story, what were you thinking?
Well, and I'll be honest, I didn't have as much of a problem with the original report from ESPN because I don't know who the source was. And so we've seen very good stories in journalism, not always, but sometimes it's one source and it turns out to be true. I think my problem was how so much media and national media piggybacked on that story as if it were true, rushed to judgment on Sean Miller. And frankly, I kind of kept thinking of the whole Richard Jewell situation. I don't know if you remember this with the Olympic bomber. You say that,
1996.
right? People say that name and they still think he was guilty. The poor guy has since passed away, and people still think he was guilty when eventually they found out it was somebody else. So the rush to judgment nationally without doing any of their own reporting is. And I know the media has taken some big hits, and I love the media, and I was part of it for many, many years. But this is one area I think we have to be really careful with.
Let's talk about Sean Miller. You heard his denial. That was a pretty big denial. We've also heard big denials from many other athletes who later turned out to be liars, to be frankly. What should we make of that, of what he said?
We should make that there's a big problem in college basketball right now. I mean, for those of us who have covered the sports for years, heard names all the times that, you know, this coach is doing this or that, this player is driving a nice new, you know, SUV that didn't have any money coming to college. We know that there's stuff going on. I think what's happening with this FBI wiretap investigation is going to change the face of college basketball. It's either going to make the NCAA or universities rethink maybe paying athletes, paying them a little bit. They're going to have to find some kind of compromise because the system right now, Bram, doesn't work.
And for people who care about the reputation of our state universities, taxpayers, we contribute to it.
Sure.
What should we make of the Regents' action in saying, you know what, we're sticking with Sean Miller?
Yeah, you know what?
Is that all they could have done?
The problem is the underlying story involves the FBI and a wiretap, and they're not sharing that wiretap. So I think it would be probably not wise for a university, despite maybe the distraction this is, to say let's not keep Miller around because they don't have evidence and they have not been given anything by the FBI that says it. They may have their own thoughts about it. I mean, they did have an assistant coach arrested, indicted because of this. So I'm guessing they're not 100% sure what the story is, but I think they were kind of left without an option.
All right, Paula Bovin, great insight. Thanks so much for joining us.